There's a strange kind of person who can walk into a room and instantly draw every pair of eyes. They speak with charm, confidence, and almost divine conviction, as if the world itself revolves around them. Their smile disarms you. Their attention feels intoxicating. Their approval feels like sunlight. And yet, behind that charisma lies something hollow, a deep, aching emptiness that no amount of praise can fill. They live in mirrors, not the kind made of glass, but the kind found in people. Every compliment becomes a reflection of who they wish to be. Every admirer becomes a pawn in their fragile empire of self-importance. And when the mirror stops reflecting what they want to see, they shatter it. That, in essence, is the world of a narcissist. 1. The mask of perfection. Narcissists are masters of illusion. They don't just create an image, they become the image. Every smile, gesture, and story is carefully constructed to reinforce a version of themselves that is grand, flawless, and enviable. They live not to be but to appear. In the beginning, this can be mesmerizing. They often come across as confident leaders, passionate lovers, or visionaries destined for greatness. But what you're really seeing is a mask, a sophisticated performance designed to protect a fragile self that lives beneath the surface. To understand the psychology of a narcissist, you must first understand that this mask is not optional for them. It's a survival mechanism, one built in childhood, often out of pain, shame, or emotional neglect. Beneath the grandiosity lies an emotional child who was once made to feel invisible, unworthy, or conditionally loved. The narcissist's obsession with being admired isn't born from arrogance, it's born from a deep terror of being insignificant. This is the paradox that defines narcissism. I am special, therefore I exist. If I am not admired, I disappear. Their self-worth isn't internal, it's borrowed from others. They feed on admiration like oxygen, and any threat to that supply, criticism, indifference, rejection, triggers rage, shame, or withdrawal. 2. The birth of narcissism, the wound beneath the ego. Every narcissist begins as a wounded child. Psychologists trace narcissistic traits back to a mix of genetic vulnerability and environmental conditions, particularly parental influence. But it's not always caused by abuse or neglect, sometimes, it's the opposite, excessive praise without genuine connection. Let's explore both sides of the coin. A. The neglected child. Imagine a boy who grows up in a house where love is conditional. He is praised when he performs, ignored when he's vulnerable, and punished when he fails. His parents are emotionally unavailable, busy, cold, or self-absorbed. He learns early that showing need leads to rejection, so he hides his feelings behind a mask of strength and competence. To survive emotionally, he creates a fantasy self, powerful, admired, untouchable. The world may see arrogance, but inside, he's protecting a wound that never healed. B. The overpraised child. Now picture another scenario, a child who is constantly told he's special, superior, destined for greatness. Every small success is exaggerated, every failure dismissed. His parents use him as an extension of their own ego, grooming him to reflect their imagined perfection. This child grows up believing he's entitled to admiration, not as a result of who he is, but simply because he exists. He never learns emotional reciprocity, that love must flow both ways. He becomes addicted to validation, but unable to form authentic connections. In both cases, the message is the same. You are not loved for who you are loved for how you appear. From that message grows the narcissistic seed, one that blossoms into charm, manipulation, and emotional hunger. 3. The narcissistic spectrum. Not all narcissism is pathological. In fact, a healthy level of narcissism is necessary for survival, it helps us maintain confidence, ambition, and self-esteem. But when the ego becomes the sole source of identity, narcissism turns toxic. Psychologists often visualize narcissism as a spectrum. Healthy narcissism, balanced self-confidence and ambition. Vulnerable narcissism, deep insecurity masked by sensitivity and self-pity. Grandiose narcissism, overt arrogance, entitlement, and dominance. Malignant narcissism, narcissism mixed with antisocial and sadistic traits. At the extreme end lies narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, a diagnosable mental condition characterized by a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and lack of empathy. But not every narcissist is clinically disordered. Some function highly in society, charming leaders, influencers, or entrepreneurs, who never seek help because their behavior works for them. They climb ladders, win hearts, and manipulate systems with surgical precision. Yet internally, they remain empty. Their self-esteem swings between inflation and collapse. When praised, they soar. When criticized, they crumble. 4. The mind of a narcissist, inside the fragile ego. To truly understand a narcissist, you must step inside their mind, a place that is both grand and haunted. It's like entering a palace built on sand, glittering halls filled with mirrors, chandeliers of ego light, and portraits of imagined greatness. But beneath the marble floors lies a basement of fear, the terror of being ordinary, unwanted, or unseen. The inner architecture. The narcissistic mind is not unified, it's divided between two warring selves. The grandiose self, the image of perfection, charm, and superiority the narcissist presents to the world. The fragile self, the hidden, wounded part that feels unworthy, small, and shame-ridden. These two selves are locked in constant battle. The grandiose self dominates during success, while the fragile self erupts during failure or criticism. Every insult, rejection, or even subtle indifference threatens to expose the wounded self, and the narcissist will do anything to protect against that exposure. That is why narcissists are hypersensitive to feedback. A single disapproving look can feel like an existential threat. They may respond with rage, "How dare you," denial, "You're the problem, not me," or silent withdrawal, "You don't deserve my attention." This is not mere pride, it's psychological armor. At the core of narcissism is a fragile ego that cannot regulate itself. Where a healthy person draws self-esteem from inner values and achievements, the narcissist relies entirely on external validation. Without constant admiration, they experience what psychologists call a narcissistic injury, a deep sense of humiliation and emotional collapse. Shame, the hidden fuel. Many believe narcissism is driven by arrogance, but at its root lies shame. A kind of shame so unbearable that it must be buried under layers of denial and superiority. This shame often begins in childhood, when a child's authentic self was ridiculed, ignored, or manipulated. To survive, they construct a false self, an idealized persona that appears perfect and invulnerable. Over time, that false self becomes their entire identity. The authentic self, the one capable of empathy and vulnerability, is locked away. But the shame doesn't disappear. It festers beneath the surface, and any reminder of it can trigger rage or withdrawal. That's why narcissists react disproportionately to small slights. A simple, "You made a mistake," can feel like, "You are worthless." To them, criticism isn't feedback, it's annihilation. The paradox is tragic. The narcissist's arrogance is not confidence, it's camouflage for deep insecurity. Control and the fear of powerlessness. Narcissists crave control because powerlessness feels like death. If they can control others' perceptions, they can protect their fragile self-image. If they can dominate emotionally, they can avoid feeling weak. Every relationship, every interaction, becomes a subtle negotiation of control. Their tactics are rarely overt at first. They may use charm to disarm, flattery to build dependence, and intellect to assert superiority. But when their control slips, when someone challenges their authority or sees through their mask, they resort to manipulation, guilt, or aggression. For example, they may gaslight you, making you question your reality. They may project their flaws onto you, "You're the selfish one." They may withdraw affection to punish and regain dominance. These tactics aren't always calculated, many are instinctive defense mechanisms. To the narcissist, controlling others is not cruelty, it's survival. The addiction to admiration. Psychologists often describe narcissists as addicts, and their drug of choice is admiration, often called narcissistic supply. Just as an addict chases the next high, the narcissist chases the next compliment, conquest, or success story. When admiration flows, they feel alive. When it stops, they feel empty. This craving explains why many narcissists move rapidly from one relationship, job, or project to another. They are constantly seeking new sources of validation because the old ones eventually lose their potency. A lover who once adored them becomes boring. A career that once defined them becomes beneath them. The cycle repeats endlessly. But here's the cruel twist, even when they receive admiration, it never satisfies them for long. They don't absorb praise, they consume it and then hunger for more. Their ego is a bottomless pit. This is why narcissists often oscillate between idealization, you're perfect, my soulmate, and devaluation, you're a disappointment. They project their ideal self onto others, and when reality doesn't match, they rage, blame, or discard. In truth, they're not in love with you, they're in love with the reflection of themselves they see in you. Empathy deficit. One of the defining traits of narcissism is a lack of empathy. But this doesn't mean narcissists are completely devoid of emotional understanding. They often possess what psychologists call cognitive empathy, the ability to recognize others' emotions, but not emotional empathy, the ability to feel them. In practical terms, a narcissist can read your emotions like a book, they know when you're sad, anxious, or excited, but they use that information strategically, not compassionately. Empathy, to them, is a tool for manipulation, not connection. This lack of genuine empathy stems from emotional detachment. Feeling others' pain would force them to confront their own, and that's unbearable. So they suppress it, replacing compassion with calculation. Yet, paradoxically, some narcissists crave deep emotional connection. They want love, admiration, and intimacy, but only if it doesn't threaten their control or expose their vulnerability. They are both starved for connection and terrified of it. The inner voice, self-talk of a narcissist. If you could listen to the private thoughts of a narcissist, you'd hear a constant internal battle between superiority and self-doubt. I'm the best. They don't appreciate me. They're all jealous. Why do I feel empty? I'll show them. I don't need anyone. Why does no one love me for who I am? This internal dialogue reveals a mind that is never at rest. Their confidence is loud, but fragile, their ego is inflated, but brittle. They oscillate between grandiosity, I'm extraordinary, and worthlessness, I'm nothing. This constant tension drives their manipulative behaviors, it's how they maintain psychological equilibrium. The grand illusion of self-love. Popular culture often paints narcissists as people who love themselves too much. In reality, they don't love themselves at all. They love their image, a carefully curated version of who they wish they were. Their self-love is conditional. I love myself when I'm admired. I love myself when I succeed. I love myself when others envy me. But when the applause fades, self-hatred returns. That's why narcissists cannot tolerate boredom, solitude, or silence. These moments confront them with their inner void, a feeling of nothingness they've spent a lifetime avoiding. True self-love requires self-acceptance, and that's what they lack most. They can't face their flaws without collapsing under shame. So they deny, deflect, and project, rewriting reality to maintain their illusion of perfection. The emotional landscape. Emotionally, narcissists live in extremes. They experience bursts of euphoria when admired and deep despair when ignored. There's little middle ground. Their emotional life is a roller coaster of exaltation and emptiness. They may appear calm and controlled, but internally, they swing between. Rage when their ego is threatened. Envy when others succeed. Contempt for those they deem inferior. Paranoia that others are plotting to humiliate them. Despair when admiration dries up. This instability makes relationships with them both intoxicating and exhausting. They can be magnetic one moment and cruel the next, shifting between warmth and coldness without warning. For them, emotions aren't a means of connection but of control. The defense mechanisms. Narcissists rely on a set of unconscious defense mechanisms to protect their fragile ego. Some of the most common include projection, attributing their flaws to others. You're selfish. Denial, refusing to acknowledge uncomfortable truths. Rationalization, justifying cruel behavior as necessary or deserved. Idealization/devaluation, overpraising or condemning others to maintain dominance. Displacement, redirecting anger toward safer targets. Splitting, seeing people as all good or all bad, with no nuance. These defenses keep them from self-awareness. Introspection threatens to expose the inner wound, so they live behind psychological walls, convinced the problem lies with everyone else. The paradox of the narcissist. When you strip away the charm, manipulation, and arrogance, what remains is paradox. A narcissist is both powerful and powerless, confident and insecure, loved and unloved, grand and hollow. They are trapped in a self-constructed maze, forever chasing the validation that once protected them but now imprisons them. In truth, the narcissist's tragedy isn't that they hurt others, though they often do, but that they can never truly love or be loved. Their relationships are mirrors, not windows. They see reflections, not people. And in trying to escape the pain of their own insignificance, they create the very loneliness they fear most. Transition, the price of power. The narcissist's life might look enviable from the outside: charm, charisma, ambition, success. But beneath the glitter lies exhaustion. Maintaining the facade takes enormous energy. They must constantly monitor how others see them, edit every word, and hide every weakness. This endless performance comes with a price, one that leads us to the next layer of our exploration. How the narcissist seeks power and admiration not merely as desires, but as psychological necessities. 5. Control, power, and the need for supply. Every narcissist is, in essence, a collector. But they don't collect objects, they collect people, admiration, and influence. Their lives are built on the pursuit of what psychologists call narcissistic supply, a steady stream of attention, validation, and emotional energy that keeps their fragile self afloat. Without it, they begin to wither. They need power not for the sake of domination alone, but because power guarantees supply. To the narcissist, control equals survival. The meaning of control. To understand the narcissist's obsession with control, imagine living in a constant state of internal chaos, where your self-worth is never stable and your identity depends on others' approval. For such a mind, losing control isn't merely unpleasant, it's existentially terrifying. Control becomes the thread that holds the illusion together. Every relationship, conversation, or decision is subconsciously filtered through a single question. How can I maintain power in this situation? That's why narcissists are rarely spontaneous. They calculate, anticipate, and adapt their behavior to remain dominant. Even their charm, which seems natural and magnetic, is a strategy of control. Charm disarms. Flattery blinds. Confidence intimidates. These are the tools they use to sculpt reality according to their needs. The different faces of control. Control in the narcissist's world doesn't always look tyrannical. It can be subtle, psychological, or emotional, often disguised as care, passion, or leadership. Let's explore its forms. 1. Emotional control. The narcissist is a master of emotional regulation, not of their own emotions, but of others. They know how to make you feel loved, guilty, afraid, or dependent, whichever emotion keeps you within their orbit. If they sense you pulling away, they may flood you with affection, apologies, or nostalgia. If they feel threatened, they may withdraw love or use silence as a weapon. They study your emotional responses the way a hunter studies prey, noting every weakness, every trigger. Over time, their control becomes invisible. You start doubting your instincts, censoring your feelings, adjusting your behavior to avoid conflict. Without realizing it, you begin to live inside their emotional gravity. This is not coincidence, it's conditioning. 2. Social control. Narcissists are deeply aware of image and reputation. They build networks, alliances, and followings, not necessarily out of genuine connection, but as extensions of their influence. Friends, colleagues, lovers, even family members become pieces in a social chessboard. They might position themselves as the admired leader, the misunderstood genius, or the benevolent victim, whichever role garners sympathy and status. They are keenly aware of hierarchy, and they climb it with precision. In relationships, they often isolate their partners from friends and support systems, ensuring dependency. In workplaces, they form alliances with powerful figures and subtly undermine rivals. And in public, they maintain a flawless image that contrasts sharply with who they are behind closed doors. Their favorite power tool: perception management. They manipulate how others see them, and how others see you. If you challenge their control, they'll often preemptively smear your reputation, ensuring that when you speak out, no one believes you. 3. Psychological control. The most dangerous form of control, however, is psychological. Narcissists reshape your sense of reality, a process psychologists call gaslighting. It begins slowly. They might contradict your memory of an event. Then, they question your judgment. You're too sensitive. You're imagining things. You always overreact. Soon, you begin to doubt yourself. You question your perceptions, your feelings, your sanity. And once you stop trusting yourself, you must rely on them for truth. That's the ultimate control, not over what you do, but over what you believe. Gaslighting is not merely manipulation, it's psychological colonization. They invade your mind, rewrite your reality, and call it love. The narcissistic supply chain. To the narcissist, every interaction is transactional. Every compliment, favor, or emotional response is currency. They subconsciously rank people based on how much supply they provide. There are 3 main types of narcissistic supply. Primary supply: attention, admiration, sexual desire, or emotional energy from close relationships, partners, family, colleagues. Secondary supply: achievements, fame, wealth, or social recognition that enhances their status. Negative supply: even conflict, fear, or hate, as long as it keeps the focus on them. This last one is crucial. Narcissists don't just crave positive attention, they crave any attention. They would rather be feared than forgotten. That's why they sometimes provoke arguments or create chaos. It ensures you're still emotionally engaged. To a narcissist, being hated is preferable to being irrelevant. The power dynamic in relationships. When you fall in love with a narcissist, it doesn't feel like control at first, it feels like destiny. They mirror your desires, values, and dreams so perfectly that you think you found your soulmate. But what's really happening is psychological mirroring. They reflect your ideal self back at you. They study you intensely, learning what makes you feel special. Then they use that knowledge to secure your devotion. Once you're hooked, the dynamic slowly shifts from admiration to possession. You may start to notice subtle changes. Your boundaries are tested and dismissed. Your achievements are minimized. Your emotional needs are invalidated. They take center stage, and you begin to orbit around them. They are not partners, they are emperors of attention. And you, unknowingly, become part of their court. Control through fear and withdrawal. When charm no longer works, narcissists resort to fear. They might use anger, threats, or emotional withdrawal to reassert dominance. This is not random cruelty, it's strategic. They learn early in life that love is conditional, so they weaponize affection. They give it and take it away to remind you who holds power. This creates what psychologists call trauma bonding, a cycle of intermittent reward and punishment that makes the victim psychologically addicted. After a period of tension and emotional pain, the narcissist might suddenly become loving again. The relief feels euphoric, reinforcing the bond. You begin to equate love with suffering, exactly as they do. In essence, they recreate their own childhood dynamics in adult relationships. They become the authority figure they once feared or admired, forcing others to live out the roles they once played. The narcissist's relationship with power. To the narcissist, power equals identity. Without power, they feel invisible, with it, they feel alive. But their concept of power is distorted. It's not about creation or collaboration, but domination and control. This is why many narcissists are drawn to leadership roles, politics, business, religion, entertainment. These arenas allow them to control narratives and receive continuous admiration. They often start with vision and charisma but eventually erode trust through manipulation, exploitation, or cruelty. Power, for them, isn't just external, it's psychological nourishment. They feed on the submission of others. Every conquered will, every silenced voice, confirms their grandiosity. Yet, ironically, this hunger for control reveals their deepest fear, losing control. Because the moment others stop obeying, admiring, or fearing them, their fragile identity begins to collapse. The fragile king, when control slips away. When a narcissist loses control, whether through exposure, rejection, or public failure, the results can be catastrophic. Psychologists refer to this as narcissistic collapse, a psychological implosion that strips away the illusion of superiority. During collapse, the narcissist may experience intense rage, lashing out at anyone nearby. Despair, sinking into depression or self-pity. Paranoia, believing others are plotting against them. Isolation, withdrawing to rebuild their image. Some become vindictive, launching smear campaigns or revenge plots to regain control. Others sink into victimhood, seeking sympathy and attention through self-pity, another form of supply. But whether they respond with fury or sorrow, the goal remains the same, to reassert dominance and restore the illusion of superiority. The psychology of dominance. What makes narcissistic control so complex is that it's not purely external, it's emotional and existential. They don't seek control because they love power, they seek it because they fear helplessness. And that fear is primal, rooted in early experiences of abandonment, neglect, or conditional love. In that sense, their quest for control is a misguided attempt at safety. By dominating others, they hope to protect themselves from the humiliation they once felt. By silencing others, they drown out the voice of their own shame. By controlling love, they avoid ever feeling unlovable again. So when you strip away the manipulation, you find not a monster, but a terrified child, trapped in an adult body, still trying to make the world safe by bending it to their will. The cost of control. Control might protect the narcissist from vulnerability, but it also isolates them from genuine connection. They cannot trust others because they cannot relinquish power. They cannot feel love because love requires equality. And they cannot find peace because their self-worth depends on endless validation. The more control they gain, the more enslaved they become to their own performance. They are prisoners of their image, constantly performing perfection, terrified of exposure. In the end, their control consumes them. They destroy relationships, exhaust themselves, and alienate everyone who could truly care for them. The very defenses that once kept them safe become the bars of their emotional prison. Transition, the narcissist in love. Nowhere is this hunger for control more vividly revealed than in love. Romantic relationships expose both the narcissist's brilliance and their tragedy. Love offers the validation they crave, but also the vulnerability they fear. It becomes a battlefield between the desire to connect and the need to dominate. In the next section, we'll step into that battlefield, exploring how narcissists fall in love, why their affection feels intoxicating, and how it inevitably turns into a cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discard.